Did you know most people buying a BMW completely overlook a critical option, one that directly affects not just how the car performs, but their entire ownership experience? This option directly impacts handling, reliability, and even long-term costs, yet barely anybody talks about it. But today we're breaking it down: BMW X Drive versus rear-wheel drive, and which one you should actually choose. So you might be wondering, what is X Drive? Well, BMW X Drive is their version of all-wheel drive. It essentially uses electronically actuated clutch packs to disperse torque between the front and rear axles. And debuting in 2003 across various models, the X Drive system was one of the only intelligent all-wheel drive systems on the market. And so essentially the car's ECU is constantly monitoring the dynamic stability control, or the DSC, to keep track of the exact position and speed of all wheels at all times. And what that allows the X Drive system to do is accurately disperse power to the front and rear wheels as needed. So if the rear wheels lose grip and the front wheels have grip, the X Drive system is actually going to divert the power away from the wheels that are losing grip to the wheels that have the most traction at any time. So even though X Drive is an all-wheel drive system, it is actually rear wheel biased. So that means that it's usually a 60-40 split, where you have 60% of the torque of the vehicle going to the rear wheels and 40% to the front wheels. And what this does is still retains the fun driving factor that BMWs are known for, where you can still drive very spiritedly and hug through tight turns just like a rear-wheel drive car. But where X Drive really shines is its ability to constantly adjust to any road conditions at any time. And one of the most impressive things about BMW X Drive is it has the ability to shift 100% of the engine power to whichever wheel is needed. So that means that you can have 100% of the engine's raw power dispersed to a specific wheel, which really could end up saving your life or saving the vehicle in slippery conditions. Especially if you're driving on roads that are very uneven and slippery, if you lose traction in all three of your wheels and your car slides out, but one wheel retains traction, that means that the X Drive system is able to counterbalance and essentially keep the car on the road in one piece. And so you can quickly see how the benefits of BMW X Drive are more control, better grip, especially in rain or snow, or even just aggressive launches off of the line. So now that we did a quick breakdown of the X Drive system, we'll do the same thing for rear-wheel drive. So essentially a rear-wheel drive car means that all of the power from the engine is stepped down to the transmission and then translated through the drive shaft to the rear differential, which essentially sends all of the engine power to the rear wheels only. The front wheels are only going to be used to handle and direct the vehicle. And how rear-wheel drive really shines is that this system retains all of the classic driving DNA that BMW is known for. With all of the power going to the rear wheels and the front wheels staying dedicated to handling, you get a very planted driving experience that's perfect for twisting down winding roads with your foot full on the throttle. And as well, since you're only going to have one differential in the rear of the vehicle, this is going to be a much lighter setup. So rear-wheel drive cars are typically hundreds of pounds lighter than X-Drive vehicles because it eliminates the need for a front differential. So that means you're going to get a fun, balanced drive with sharper handling, and at the same time you're simplifying the entire drivetrain because you only have one differential to worry about, eliminating half the maintenance that you would need to do on an X-Drive vehicle. So the key takeaways from rear-wheel drive are more fun, more simple, and lighter. But since that was just a quick recap, let's go ahead and get into the performance value of both of these systems. The BMW X Drive is going to be much faster off the line, offering better 0 to 60 times in a rear-wheel drive vehicle. You have to keep in mind all four wheels are gripping at the same exact time, even with that rear wheel bias. And since the system is intelligent and constantly monitoring the dynamic stability control system, so in just milliseconds, any wheels that spin out from a dig when you're accelerating from 0 to 60 will get more power varied to them, allowing the vehicle to actually move quicker off of the line. Another performance boost that X Drive is going to give is that you will get more control under harder acceleration. Since all four wheels are constantly planting down power, you're going to get much more control than a rear-wheel drive system, and you have the chance of fishtailing the car or the car moving off the center line as you're accelerating. But with that being said, rear-wheel drive vehicles are going to be much more fun on tossy-turny roads because you're going to have a much more planted driving experience. because the front end is completely dedicated to just steering, so you're going to get less over or understeer while maintaining the 50-50 weight distribution that BMWs are known for. And also on top of that, for drift builds, this is nearly impossible with an XDrive vehicle. Rear-wheel drive allows you to be able to drift the car and whip the tail end out if wanted. So especially for people wanting to chase the most power as possible and drive through winding road conditions, rear-wheel drive is going to take the cake and be much better. And since there's only going to be one differential on the vehicle, you're going to have less drivetrain loss. Typical drivetrain loss can vary from 5 to 15% of the total horsepower made from the vehicle, but with XDrive, it's going to be a little bit on the higher end of that spectrum. So for performance, it really matters what type of driver you are. Do you value more power down to the wheels from 0 to 60 off of a straight line? Or do you want to drive more spiritedly and really dig the car into winding roads with the chance of drifting the vehicle and have less drivetrain loss? So for that, there's not really a clear winner. It just depends what type of driver you are. Straight line acceleration, the XDrive wins in every way. On a track with a much more dialed in suspension setup, the rear wheel drive can really take the cake here. But now that we talked about performance characteristics a little bit, let's talk about the daily and practical handling of the vehicle. So one of the biggest disadvantages you're going to get with the XDrive system is just how much heavier the vehicle is. Again, you have two differentials instead of one, and there's just much more all-wheel drive hardware that's needed to keep the vehicle going with all four wheels at all times. And so because you're going to have a lot more weight up front on the vehicle, this typically does not retain the 50-50 weight distribution that BMWs are known and loved for. So with XDrive vehicles, you're always going to get a slight amount of understeer compared to a rear-wheel drive system. But with that being said, BMW really did do an amazing job with this intelligent all-wheel drive system because it keeps a rear-wheel bias. So that means even though it's all-wheel drive, in ideal conditions when the sun is out and it's not slippery road conditions, you're still getting 60 to 70% of the engine's power directed to the rear wheels, so it still kind of gives you that rear-wheel drive driving experience. But this is where diehard enthusiasts and anybody wanting to track their vehicle is going to want to lean to just the rear-wheel drive system, because you're going to retain the 50-50 weight distribution, which means no matter how tight of a turn or corner you're taking, the vehicle's going to stay planted front to rear, left to right, and it overall just feels more connected to the road. So for skilled drivers who want more of a sharp steering feel, the rear-wheel drive system is going to win in this category. So again, it just depends on what type of driver you are. If you want a vehicle that you can hop in and drive in any conditions, rain, snow, ice, cold, etc., and you want very fast acceleration off of a center line with quicker 0 to 60 times, the XDrive wins without competition. But if you want more of the track-like, sporty driving experience where you want to feel connected to the road and you overall just want a more planted driving experience, then the rear-wheel drive system is going to win in the handling category if you're that type of driver. But now that we went over the performance aspect, we're going to dive in to one of the most important aspects that you need to take into account whenever you're deciding, do you want to buy rear wheel or XDrive? And that is going to be the long-term maintenance of both of these systems. So there's absolutely no way around it. XDrive is a more complex system that has much more moving parts. That means that there's always going to be more things to maintain. You have a transfer case, you have the front differential, the rear differential, all of the CV axles, front and rear. So now that you're actually putting power down on the front wheels as well, you're going to have much more wear and tear on the front CV axles as to where you really wouldn't have that on a car that only steers with the front wheels. On top of that, since you're going to have more moving components, the underside of the vehicle is going to have a lot less room, meaning that typical maintenance is going to take a little bit longer and shops and mechanics can start to charge you a little bit more. So overall with XDrive, from the maintenance standpoint, you're going to have a lot more of a headache than you would rear wheel drive. So now that you have two differentials, you need to upkeep the fluid on both of them. Now that you have a transfer case, you have to do the fluid change for that as well. And let's not forget, BMW XDrive systems are almost notorious for having transfer case issues. It doesn't take long. You can just search up online BMW XDrive transfer case problems, and you'll see a plethora of people on forums, Reddit, and etc. all reporting that they have an issue with their transfer case. Now, what I will say is the XDrive system is absolutely amazing if you're under warranty, and if the car is new or even just new to you and covered, then all of these maintenance headaches kind of are null and void and don't really matter. But if you're paying out of pocket, the XDrive system is much harder to maintain if you don't have a lift that allows you to get underneath the vehicle. vehicle. And now this category is truly where the rear-wheel drive system shined, because rear-wheel drive is just so much more simple. You have one differential at the rear of the vehicle. There's no transfer case. That means that all you need to do is maintain the gear oil at the rear and you're solid, especially if you have a non-M, so you don't have the limited slip differential. This is literally a maintenance problem that you will never have. And on top of that, since the front wheels are not driving, they're only handling the vehicle, the CV axles wear out much slower. The rear-wheel drive system is just so much more DIY friendly. There's less moving parts. You literally have the engine to the transmission to the drive shaft to the differential. So as long as your drive shaft is undamaged, the rear differential is kind of going to do what it needs to do, as long as, like I said, you maintain fluid. So there's absolutely no two ways about it. If your vehicle's under warranty and you don't have to worry about paying out of pocket to fix the differential, maybe you have a lift and you're able to actually get underneath the vehicle, then sure, the XDrive system is pretty great. But if you truly value a car that just works when it's supposed to, with less of a headache, that you don't have to pay out of pocket to make huge repairs for, the rear-wheel drive system takes this without even a competition. So for the overall conclusion, if you live in an area with heavy rain, snow, unpredictable weather, you value your vehicle gripping over the pure driving feel, then choose XDrive. But if you want an enthusiast-focused driving experience with classic handling and balance, you live somewhere that's warm and dry that occasionally does rain, but snow and ice isn't always on your radar, and you prefer lower maintenance and a more simple, raw, driver-focused experience, then there's no two ways about it. Rear-wheel drive is for you. But what's your pick? Drop a comment down below and let me know if you prefer the intelligent XDrive system or the more driver-focused rear-wheel drive. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful or informational, and smash that subscribe button to stay tuned for more BMW breakdowns and driving tips like this one.